My name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today for our AAFCA Roundtables, we are welcoming Charlize Theron and Kiki Layne, the stars of the new kick-ass drama Old Guard, which is currently airing on Netflix. We're going to start off by introducing our members who are across the country, starting with DJ Chris Styles in Cleveland, Malika Don in the Oakland Bay Area, Emmanuel in Chicago,
Hi.
Rebecca in Chicago, Al McGee in South Florida,
Hi.
Reggie Pounder, the real film critic in Chicago, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Mercedes in Atlanta, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, Carla Renata, the Kirby film critic in Los Angeles, and Ruben Rigaud, who is doing this. He's actually an MD in real life and is doing this on his lunch break at a hospital in Miami, Florida.
Wow,
So
that's impressive. You just put us all to shame. Thank you.
I'm gonna let you guys do your thing. I'll see you in a few.
Good afternoon, y'all. It's good to see you, Kiki and Charlize. I think I have a question for both of you over here from Oakland. It's kind of like, watching a lot of interviews, trying to prep for this. I think one thing that was really cool that Gina was talking about, the physicality of the film and how y'all were preparing. And, Kiki, she was saying that she had you not only training in boxing, but also with a running coach. And obviously, Charlize, you've been in the game forever, kind of kicking ass all over the place. So, like, what were the challenges for this particular film on either of your ends, getting into the physicality of the roles and really committing to these characters who, in every moment, like, they're tired of dying, but they also can't. So there's like this tension between those moments. How did you get into the physicality of that?
I mean, I think the hardest thing in general is just showing up every day. And that's that kind of consistency that you need to have in place, the discipline that you need to have in place to really understand that time is of the essence, and you have to utilize every second that you have in prep to get as much, under your belt to go and do a movie like this. I think that is ultimately truthfully, that is the biggest challenge. You can go into the finer detail of like this certain style of fighting was harder for me. My body didn't really mesh with Pencak. I did a little bit more, Hema or karate or artist, but ultimately what it means is that you have to show up to the gym every single day, and it hurts a lot. So, the nice thing this time around for me that I didn't necessarily, I had a different version of this on Atomic Blonde, but I got to train with Kiki, and that was really inspiring. When you have a partner in crime and you have somebody else showing up, it makes it a little easier. You work harder, and that other person really kind of like gifts you that. And Kiki really gifted that to me in this film. And I think I worked way harder than I would have if I was alone in the gym.
Yeah, everything that she just said, yeah.
Hey, Charlize and Kiki, this is Carla Renata, the Curvy Film Critic. What's up, y'all?
What's up?
Okay, I just got to give you your flowers, Miss Charlize Theron, because you are one of the badass chicks in Hollywood that's doing it. You are doing it. The Revolution is televised, baby, on Netflix, and it is televised with the Old Guard with you and Miss Kiki, okay? Let me just say that. So now I'm going to get to my... You're welcome. So I'm going to get to my question. So both of you all are very strong and confident women, but we both know that being in Hollywood, being strong and confident women has its challenges. So I'm wondering what that does to your psyche and how you, both of you, handle that in the process.
Sorry. It's interesting for me because I'm just getting started, but I don't think it's by accident that my start has placed me, next to and being able to work and learn from, such strong, confident women like Charlize or Regina King or even Sherry on Coming to America. you know, women who have been activists, you know, for this time, but haven't, I don't know, they're still so very true to themselves and aren't afraid of saying what it is that they're committed to and remaining committed to that, and not letting, you know, all the Hollywood BS kind of come in and interfere and kind of take them off the track and the path that they've, you know, been on since they first broke into the industry. And so I don't think it's by accident that I've been, you know, able to work with these women who carry themselves in that way. I think it's just, I don't know, been inspiring for me to walk in that type of confidence and strength, and to not allow myself to be become afraid of it or intimidated by it just because other people may be.
Charlize?
Yeah, wow, that was so well put. Yeah, I mean, you are very, you know, when I started, when I reflect back on, you know, not to age myself, but 25 years plus, you know, maybe over 60 movies, I am saddened by the fact that I've gotten to work so little with women. The one thing that it did do for me, though, is like what Kiki just said, it really reminds you so vividly of the women that you did get the chance to work with, who inspired you and maybe encouraged you. And it's strange that she brings up Regina, because Regina and I did a movie when I was really, really young. I think it was my fourth movie. And I have vivid memories of Regina walking onto a set with this. She was just formidable. There was something about her that was so inspiring. You know, I think of myself as somebody who was raised pretty much by a single mom, and my mom is a broad, you know, she's not a pushover, and she raised me that way. You know, she really raised me believing that I could do anything. And coming from where I came from, you know, the things that she kind of instilled in me was so crazy when I think about it now. That, you know, I grew up in a tiny little farm in South Africa, and I had never traveled. I knew nothing about this industry. I didn't even know that that was like a real job. I thought Tom Hanks was like a banker. You know, I knew nothing about it. So when you think about my mom going, yeah, you should go try that, like, what the F were we thinking? But it's women like that who think outside of the box that have always been the ones that kind of made me push further. I remember vividly also working with Frances McDormand, and there's something about her that's just so, she lets you know with every inch of her body, don't fuck with me. And, you know, sometimes we need that. We need to be reminded of that, because there have definitely been times in my early career where I felt like it was upon me to make men feel better about themselves, or to figure that it was so hard to get a start in this business that maybe I should laugh louder at their jokes, because then, you know, maybe I'll be remembered in the audition. Things that we shouldn't even have to consider. I do think, though, that things are really changing, and it's so incredible to see it in this generation. I look at Kiki and I'm so enamored by how she carries herself. We had dinner one night in Morocco, and, you know, after a couple of glasses of wine, I was just like mother hen. I was like, listen to me, don't let anybody. And her attitude was just like, I would never. Like, she was just like, no, I wouldn't let somebody do that to me. And I was like, yay.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate y'all. And you are doing this, Charlize, in bringing women's stories to light and making sure that women are seen as strong and badass on film. So thank you both. Good luck with the film. I'm looking for the sequel. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi guys, DJ Chris Styles. Yo, first off, it was a dope film. I stumbled upon it on Netflix. It popped up and I watched it. I was like, yo, it's a real dope film. Question, Kiki, this is your first action film. Do you work with Charlize, who's been in like a lot of action films doing her thing? How did it feel doing an actual your first one with Charlize? And Charlize, what tidbits did you give her for being in some of your action films?
I mean, first, I was just grateful. I mean, I've always wanted to do something in action, so to get the opportunity to make my entrance into action, you know, working with Charlize and also working with Gina, I mean, it made it that much more special, because I mean, Charlize has been such a powerhouse in showing what women are capable of in this genre, and showing that we can be just as badass and just as marketable and just as capable of being, you know, these great leaders and fighters and warriors. And again, like, I just don't think something like that is by accident, you know, as I would like to do more of these films. So then to be able to work alongside a woman who has, you know, been such a force in this genre, and such a force in this genre for women, and just being able to see how do you, I don't know, just watching her command the set and watching her take care of herself, which is super important. Yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know. I couldn't really think of it's kind of the dopest place to start, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God, that is so sweet. You know, I think we had great chemistry right from the beginning when we met each other. I think we both really, you know, I have the utmost respect for Kiki. She brings tremendous chops. Her performance in If Beale Street Could Talk was one of my favorite films of that year, but her performance in particular, you know, as an actress, I was like, this girl's bringing it. I better, like, you know, sharpen my tools. And so I think we started our relationship off with just a lot of mutual respect for each other. And again, like I said, you know, when you start in the gym, it's like, yeah, there's muscle memory that will come back faster because you've done it before. But outside of that, you're really starting from scratch. You know, you're trying to like get your muscles to get strong enough. So we were really training on par on that level with each other. If anything, you know, of course I would share things with her, small little things, you know, things that I've learned, you know, maybe if you don't do this is a little easier, or if it hurts here, like I have found, like, do this. But like, there's such stupid things that, you know, I mean, but it's also just like a nice way to build a relationship, right? And she did the same for me. I think there were days where, you know, I was really struggling physically, and it was really empowering to be next to this young woman and to see how hard she was working. And she's just a great girl. She's a great girl. And if anything, I would say what she gave me was a real gift on this, versus, you know, me kind of like being the wise one and giving all the advice. I think if anything, she was really consistent in just showing up every single day and making me feel safe in that. And I'm really grateful to that, Kiki.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Hello, this is E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews out here in Chicago. First and foremost, thank you both so much for taking the time to, you know, come out and talk with us here. Charlize, I have absolutely loved how you were able to capture the emotional burden on Andy's character throughout the film in your performance. And I don't want to give anything away, of course. And this question is going to be for Charlize, and then Kiki, I'd love for you to weigh in as well. But if there were to be a sequel in the works, what do you think we could expect from Andy's character from an emotional standpoint, given her new, how could I say, status and potential encounter that's going to be coming forward? And for Kiki, if a sequel were to happen, and if, let's just say, this action star baton were passed over to you, can you talk about what that's going to mean for you if you were to lead an action franchise of your own?
Who do you want to start?
Charlize, if you don't mind.
I think that you are spot on. I think that if we were lucky enough to go and explore a sequel, I do think those would probably be two very big, important emotional points for Andy. Obviously, her relationship with Quinn is one that we set up in the first film to be a very important one, and one that she carries a lot of, that she's haunted by. You know, one where she feels a tremendous amount of guilt that she let her friend down, and that she couldn't fix the situation. And she's lived with that for thousands and thousands of years. And I think the dynamic is going to be an interesting one, because it will not be, they will not reunite and just give each other a hug. They'll probably, I mean, she's pissed. I mean, Quinn is pissed. I think we can tell that from this. So I think there might be a great fight before we hug. And then, yeah, I think, listen, I think, again, not to spoil the film, but I think we wanted to make sure that this film and the characters in this film had real stakes. And it is something that you really struggle with in the world of immortality. How do you worry for your characters? How do you feel angst when they get into dangerous situations, if they can live forever, if nothing happens? And so the element of pain and suffering, and also that the gift can go, we just don't know when, is something that I think really helped us to have people tap into these characters in an emotional way. And I just want to say, yes, we need to have, as soon as possible, Kiki be in her own franchise. And I just want to throw my name in the hat as producer.
Hey.
Okay.
Right. Yes. Nah, man. I mean, for the sequel, I think it would be cool to see, I don't know, even more of those moments. I mean, we left off and Niall is like, okay, I'm joining the team. I'm leaving my family behind. But I don't know, still moments of when that pull towards her family still happens, and when she can't quite, fit into the group, being the new one. I hope that Niall will learn to use more weapons. In the second film, I would love to be swinging some type of sword, or some type of cool shit like that. Have my sword and my gun too. Yeah, and I mean, I really enjoyed being a part of a big ass action film. I mean, I would love to do more of it, and just representing for kick ass warrior women and warrior Black women, and putting that at the forefront, because I mean, what we're portraying is real. There are women leading, there are women in the military, that this is all real. It's just pushing, on Hollywood, like, yo, represent this more in film. It's so important.
Thank you both so much. As an action junkie myself, I really appreciate what you both are doing, pushing diversity and giving that positive female strong presence in a genre that severely lacked it. So thank you so much.
Wow, thank you. Thanks so much.
Hi, Kiki. Hi, Charlize. I'm Ruben from Miami. I was born in the Dominican Republic. And I'm a huge fan of action movies, and I've been following since I'm a kid. And I wonder, Charlize, how you think he has evolved the genre since you did Iron Flux, for example, or since the 90s, since Catherine Bigelow directed this Point Break? Because I feel the women's, it's like now they're having their time to make these kind of movies. You have portrayed villains in Fast and the Furious movies. You had Atomic Blonde, and like it's been something different. How do you see the industry since you did this movie like 15, 20 years ago from now? Because back in the time, back like early 2000s, it was like something rare, something weird to see a woman doing the lead character in an action movie. For Kiki, how do you see yourself in the future doing drama, doing comedy? I would love to see you doing some comedy that you have, I don't know, this energy, funny energy that I know people will love to.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a really smart observation, that there's definitely been an evolution. I just wish that we could go a little faster about it. We've been taking our sweet ass time when it comes to female protagonists in this genre, and also just females getting to make this genre. When I did Young Flex in 2004, I remember very vividly this real pressure of being fully aware that if the movie didn't work, that I really wouldn't get another chance at it. And that was kind of a unspoken, but we were all, as filmmakers, female filmmakers, we were all very aware that was the reality, that a woman is very lucky if she gets one shot at it. And if it doesn't work, studios don't necessarily really back that up again. And so when the film didn't really work, I was really heartbroken. I really thought like that was my one shot there. And you become a little tiny bit resentful when you think of the industry in the reverse of male protagonists in the genre. And there is more of a sense of forgiveness if something doesn't work. Not so much of it is put on the male actor who's telling the story. There's always this kind of like more logistic understanding of why the film didn't work out. With women, for some reason, that really lacked in the early 2000s, and still in a weird way, it still kind of does today. You know, I feel like we've been very lucky. I shouldn't say that. We shouldn't be lucky. Like, we've been fucked over. And we need to stop saying we're so lucky, because we need people to step up to the plate a little bit more so that women have these opportunities. Because when we do, in the case of the old guard, it's really clear that these films are really rich, audiences really respond to them, and we realize that the lack of female protagonists or female driven stories is something that's so new because we haven't explored them, and it's giving the genre a facelift. It's making the genre more exciting. So you know, I think that needs to change more. I'm never going to be truthfully happy with the fact that I'm being singled out, or Scarlett Johansson or Gal Gadot. That's just, when you can count on two hands the women out there who are doing this, that's just not right. It really isn't right. So, you know, I'm trying to be as proactive as I can through my production company to create those opportunities. I think it is what I would have wanted somebody to do for me 20 years ago. And now that I'm in that position, I take that very seriously. But it's also, we have to call each other out. You know, we need these big streaming companies. And I do think Netflix is doing a great job at creating way more opportunities, not just for women, but women of color, to really come and tell non-binary, queer, whatever that story is. Like, I feel like there's more opportunity for that to happen. So if anything, maybe the streaming business will finally give us that kick in the ass so that we can kind of translate that into studio filmmaking.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
All that. Oh, sorry. I'm just like, yes. But no, for what you asked me, I mean, yeah, I want to do a little bit of everything, but I do have Coming to America coming out at the end of the year. So I set my, you know, dip my little toe into some comedy at the end of the year, and big comedy too. It's crazy. So yes, it's still coming.
It's cool. Thank you. Hi guys, this is Reggie Ponder, the real critic out of Chicago, and Charlize, I'm really glad that you talked about this, about women in particular in the industry, because myself, I just love the fact that there are two strong women leading this film. And I have this discussion with my wife all the time. She's like, well, why did you like that movie? You'd be like, because Charlize was in it. But was it good? You know, and a lot of times, with women being 52% of the movie-going audience, you say, well, why haven't we seen this before? So I'm just really, that's just my commentary. I'm just glad that you spoke on that. I want to ask you, particularly Charlize, and I'll come back to you, Kiki, in a moment, is that Greg Rucker talked about that this is not a superhero movie. But in some ways, it actually feels like a superhero movie. But he says, nah, this is not a superhero movie. How did you approach it? Did you think that you guys were superheroes? Because y'all were superheroes to me, but you know.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you. I mean, I'll say that we didn't necessarily feel the need to fit the story into a perfect little box. We didn't feel this need to label it as a superhero, or I think more importantly, I think the thing that placed us all on the same level, we were all on the same page on one thing, and that is that we wanted the story to feel grounded. It was important to all of the actors who came on board. It was definitely one of the biggest things for me that I discussed with Gina, and wanting to make sure that she felt strongly about that as well. Because I thought the graphic novel lends itself, you know, and who could have foreseen that we would be releasing the film in this time, right? And with everything going on right now. But even back then when we were developing it, there was something about this story that really resonated to me in a very real and grounded way that I felt like people would really emotionally lean into. And that was really how we went about it. And I think if anything, we were constantly kind of fighting against the superhero aspects of these characters, because a lot of times, like I said, they make it harder for you to feel emotionally invested in them because you don't worry for them, right? And so we were almost like kind of like fighting against that more and trying to give them more human qualities, more flaws, more mistakes, things that people could really relate to, instead of making them somewhat just heroic without earning it, right? I think there's a sense of this kind of storytelling that's really nice when you feel like as you're watching the story, your characters are earning their respect and their level of expertise, or how you kind of relate to them through the story. And we wanted to do a good job with that. Yeah, listen, yeah, and there's a whole conversation to be had that they are maybe the superheroes that we need today, right? More of. It would be great if you know, our soldiers out there in the front lines, if they could have the gift or curse. But in this case, I would think it would be a gift of immortality, you know? So there's so much. That's why we knew this was so rich, because there's such a big conversation around the themes of this story.
Excellent. I'll just, for sake of alliteration, I'll just say strong, smart, sexy superhero. Kiki, my question for you is, given the fact that we're in this time of protest and highlight on African-American characters, did you feel a responsibility for this character and the way in which you played this character as the lone African-American immortal?
I mean, I always carry with me a responsibility of how I represent Black women in any of the films that I do, just because, I mean, Hollywood has had a very limited view and limited opportunities, you know, for the types of roles and stories that Black women and even further dark-skinned Black women get to play. So any role that I take, I carry with me a responsibility of, I don't know, breaking out of the stereotypical places that I have seen actresses that look like me. But thankfully, coming into this project, like when I met Gina at my director session, she made it very clear that she wanted Nile to be, you know, a lot fuller and have, you know, even more depth than, you know, where Nile is in the graphic novel. So coming into it, Gina and Greg were already committed to, you know, creating a more complex and full character. So thankfully, you know, I was coming into a project where there were already people in that mindset of making sure that this Black character was full, complex, complicated, and well-rounded.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thanks, you guys.
Wow, I'm excited. Two beautiful women, two beautiful actresses. Well, first of all, Charlize, my first question to you is this. Now, as the character Andy, you said something at the beginning of the film. You were looking at TV and seeing how things were going on around the world, and you said, we feel like whatever we have done is still not working. The world is worse. Well, why did you say that as Andy? And did Gina Prince, did she have to talk to you about that line to make you fully understand that line, or the writers?
That was always in the graphic novel as a very clear kind of description of Andy's character that Greg Rucka kind of originated for Andy. The fact that she starts off in the story despondent and kind of just, you know, she's lost not only faith in herself and purpose in herself, but in the world. And she is really tired. She's tired. She's lived longer than anybody else and she has seen it all. And I think what she's telling us in that moment is nothing changes, right? Mm-hmm. That must be incredibly demoralizing for a person to go through. So that was always it came from the graphic novel. We knew it was a very important moment for Andy to have to really kind of tell the narrative of where we find her emotionally. I found in my experience of working in philanthropy, a very similar feeling that I have had. You know, I've worked in philanthropy for almost, you know, over 20 years, and I started an organization in 2007. And I remember when we launched, it was just this overwhelming feeling like, you know, how is this gonna change anything? And you get so stuck on the size of the problem, and they can be so overwhelming that you forget that it starts with one person. And I think I really leaned heavily on that experience for myself of, you know, working and wanting to try and leave this world in a better place, or just feeling like I wasn't part of the problem, and that I kind of showed up for service in some way. I want my daughters to know that about their mother. I want to live by example for them. But it is very overwhelming, you know, and I will say, more than anything else that I do in my life, more than my job, I find that world sometimes it's very emotionally very hard, because when you see sometimes how easy change should come and can come, the lack of support around change sometimes is really frustrating. And when you see unnecessary suffering and unnecessary deaths, and you know that if everybody actually just stood together and decided that no more, that could actually happen, but it doesn't necessarily happen, it's a very difficult thing. I'm always so inspired by people who stick it through in philanthropy, people who really, you know, stand their ground and stay, because it emotionally, it beats you up. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And Kiki, as Nile, your character, now you finally discovered that, hey, your life has changed. Now, was she worried, or is she worried about, well, she was going to have a normal life at first. Is she still worried about having a normal life, or has she really accepted her role? And also, a normal life, what I mean, like, seems like she wanted to get married, like her parents, and have kids, have love, and things like that. Is now still worried about that, Kiki?
I mean, this is how I approach all of that. I mean, I think that we all can relate to, you know, moments in life where life just kind of throws something at you that catches you so completely off guard and kind of just turns your life upside down. So even though of course I didn't understand, you know, gaining immortality, I understood that, and understood the struggle that comes with trying to accept your new normal. Even if, you know, any of us have lost someone super close to us, that's one of the, you know, the hard things, is accepting, well, what does my life now look like now that I am, you know, living without this person, or living, you know, under these circumstances. And I think it's something that there's good days and there's bad days. And, you know, maybe after enough time, you start to have longer stretches of good days, but then sometimes something just happens and it reminds you of what it was like before, you know, that big life event or that change. And so I think that, you know, like if we do, you know, make a second film, we would definitely see Niall still struggling with, you know, accepting what her new normal is, and still desiring for some of those things that, you know, that she had always wanted, but that were kind of taken away from her.
Well, thank you very much. And also, Charlize, thank you too. It was a very good film. I'm an action fan also. I watched the film twice, but one thing to you, Kiki, is this. If Bill Street could start, I loved you in that. I fell in love with your character. You did a very good job with that one also. And Charlize, you too, with many of your films. I love you in many of your films too. Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ford. I'm with the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin and with WCPT in Chicago. And I have a question for Charlize, which follows up on some of the things that you've touched on a little bit before. You have earned a lot of authority in the industry by being a very capable actor in a spectrum of roles. And the roles that you have been in, certainly recently, have been women with authority. So Andy, you know, and Megyn Kelly was looked to be the problem solver. Even in a long shot, your character had the weight of the world on her shoulders, even though it was a comedy. And so that authority that is associated with you as a person is something that you can wield in the world and in the industry. So we see a little bit of that when you just raised your hand as a producer for Kiki. And I'm hearing you touch on that when you talk about your philanthropy. Can you talk about how you, the ways you have used that, that weight that you have earned? And can you also talk about your experience of being the mother to Black daughters?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is trying, I think in my life, I try to remind myself on a daily basis to just be aware. And it starts with just forcing myself in all decisions that I make, whether I choose the restaurant that my family is going to eat food from, whether I decide to do a film or the project that I want to develop or the story that I want to tell as a producer, or, you know, I think in my everyday life, I try to have an awareness of how I am functioning in this world and whether I'm functioning in it from a white place, a place of my privilege where I don't have to be aware of anything. You know, I do now have the responsibility of 2 young girls. I take that very seriously. I've, you know, I always wanted to be a mom, and a lot of people look at adoption as their second choice, maybe through necessity. Adoption was never a second choice for me. It was always how I wanted to be a mom. And my children came to me not because I chose them, but they were born at that time that I filed. And in a weird way, I feel like they were my children. There was no choosing in that process. We kind of found each other. And my vow to my kids have always been that, you know, to just always be truthful, to be transparent. But I now have a much bigger responsibility on my hands because I'm raising 2 African-American girls, and I need to get beyond myself as a white person who has benefited from so much privilege. I'm talking about growing up in South Africa during the apartheid era, where whether I voted that system in place or not, I benefited from it. That is something that in many ways I think scarred me more than my family life, scarred me more than the trauma of my father's death or living with an alcoholic. I think just purely when I grew up and I realized what I benefited from and how people suffered from that system that I was just raised in, that was the first thing that sent me to therapy in my 30s. And I didn't really fully know how much that had damaged me as a person. And I think from knowing that, I am hyper aware of, I think it's also the thing that absolutely kills me about what's happening right now, because what happened in my country should have been the greatest lesson for us to never ever fall into the same place again, because the devastation that happened in South Africa and the amounts of people that died unnecessarily is something that's unforgiving. It's unforgivable. And yet here we find ourselves in the country of the free and the brave. And this is happening, and this has been happening for hundreds of years. It's heartbreaking to me. I am so sorry. I don't even know if I'm answering your question. I'm all over the place.
Well, yes, you are. And you're in a position to act on all of these feelings and observations, and you're setting an example for the world, which, like it or not, the world is watching you in your interaction with your daughters, like who you choose to get behind to produce what you say to the public. And it's really important. And so I personally would like to encourage you, and you know, to the extent that we on this call are in a position to let people know, you know, and certainly as Black critics, we're very interested in the feelings about apartheid and your relationship with your daughters in a positive way and not just a voyeuristic way, right? That has meaning to us. So, thank you for sharing with us in this way.
Oh my gosh, now you're gonna really make me cry. Thank you. Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I feel like it is, we have to call each other out now. We talk about this every so often, and it's like a hot topic for 3 months, and then everybody forgets, and we go back to business as usual. And that complacency has got to go away. And I think the only way for it to go away is for us to put real pressure, social pressure. We have so many formats now, so many places where we can do that, to keep that heat, to keep that pressure on businesses, so that we don't go back to business as usual. And I think if that means we have to start calling each other out, then that's what we need to do. But the thing that's so unbelievable to me too is that when you make these films, they're so rich and audiences respond to them. When we started test screening this film, audiences were just like freaking out over the story because it is so global and diverse. All of these things are beneficial to storytelling and to our industry as far as a business, and yet we've completely neglected it. It's lazy. We've been lazy.
Well, there's no going back now, I should think.
Hell no, as my 5-year-old says. Hell no.
Oh, well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, ladies. I'm Mercedes. I'm with She Critiques, and I represent Black Women Film Network here in Atlanta. My first question is to you, Charlize, and then I also have one for you as well, Kiki. We touched a little bit on this earlier about the theme of immortality. Immortality. I'm sorry. I had this all rehearsed.
All the time, by the way.
I had it rehearsed.
No.
But the theme of immortality. And I think with your character, Andy, Charlize, what are your own thoughts around the blessing and curse of immortality? And she also gets that gut punch as well. So Andy's going through this and she's, taking bullets, taking stabs, and there's fearlessness. But then she gets that gut punch of, wait a minute, my clock is ticking a little bit here. I want you to talk a little bit about the blessing and curse of immortality and how you feel about it.
Yeah, sure. Listen, it was probably the thing that we discussed the most on during the development process, and also while we were shooting this film, because it's such a huge theme in the story. So I remember vividly, before I made this movie, whenever people asked me about immortality, I would just kind of be like, yeah, that would be great. Wouldn't that be amazing? But it's when you ponder it for a little bit longer that you really realize the loneliness and the pain that comes with that. And I know this is such a stupid analogy, but, given that dogs live much shorter lifespan than us, I've gone through 4 dog families that I've had to lose in my life. It's really hard. It's really painful. I can't imagine if those were my humans, my tribe. Mm-hmm. And that's really what Andy has to face, and has faced for over 6,000 years. That's and also seeing the realization in a character like Niall, who have to come to some kind of a resolve around that idea, is something that's, I think, very human, right? Because even if we're not immortal, it is the question of what do you do with the time that you have now? In a weird way, we are immortal right now, right? Because we don't know, we're living, we have an idea of when that's gonna go away, but our characters are kind of set up in that same way. At some point, it will go away for them as well. And so the question becomes more where do you find that purpose in your life, and how do you live the time that you do? How do you, the thing you have power over, how do you choose to what you're gonna do with those things?
Thank you. And for you, Kiki, this being your first action film, I feel like you always approach your characters with a authenticity, a rawness, and also a pureness and an innocence almost. I see that in Niall's character. So I wanted to know if there was a conversation at all with Gina of how you would approach Niall and portray her.
Definitely from the very beginning, just having, my director session with Gina. I mean, we definitely wanted to represent, you know, Niall's physical strength and, you know, the dignity and strength that comes with playing a Marine, but also, you know, not being afraid to dig into and represent. I mean, what she's going through, there's a lot of pain and fear there. Even I think it's Nikki who says when they first dream about me, and Booker's kind of like, oh, I don't want to go get her. And Nikki says, like, don't act like you forgot your first time. Don't act like you forgot how lonely and afraid you were. And so I definitely had to, you know, open myself up to lean into that aspect of it too. Like, yeah, I'm playing this, you know, badass, kick-ass warrior, but at the same time, I'm playing her at a time where she is very afraid and she is feeling alone and unsure of herself. And it's kind of, you know, being forced to let go of the life that she's always known. So that was definitely always a big part of, you know, conversations that I had with Gina about really, you know, making space to dig deep into all those aspects of Niall and what she's going through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Absolutely awesome film, ladies. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You guys, we could go on and on and on forever. This is just how much we enjoyed it, but unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time with these two ladies. Thank you, members of AAFCA. We appreciate you coming on board today. Thank you to Kiki and Charlize. We love you. We look for us to support and continue to uplift you as you continue on your journey. You guys have a terrific day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you very much.
Bye.